All right, so the first strategy that we're going to talk about today is setting up your workspace. I want you to think about how the last week for you went accessing school from home and think about how well the space that you chose to work worked for you. You need to think about what works for you when you're at school. Some of you really like to be in your room when you're working, or maybe in a quiet space, curled up in a comfy chair, though others of you really work better if you're in kind of the middle of the LC with some extra accountability for people who are walking by, making sure that you're on task, or noticing if you get distracted and helping you get back on task. Think about what works best for you and try to replicate that at your house. Now keep in mind that the most comfortable place in your house might not be the place where you're going to be the most productive. If being in a space that's super comfortable makes you feel sleepy, or makes it just a little bit too easy to kind of drift off or daydream or do other things that you enjoy, maybe pick a space where you're sitting at a table or a little bit more in the middle of your house where it's less likely that you're going to get distracted. So once you've picked the place that you want to work, think about the kinds of materials that you need to have handy so that you can be really productive. You're definitely going to need your computer and a charger. Those are definite materials that you'll need as you're accessing your classes. You also may need your binder or your planner, maybe some paper, something to write with, and certainly any textbooks that you're using. Having easy access to those will really prevent you from getting distracted when you have to go find those things. So once you have picked your workspace and you've gathered your materials, the next step is to think about how distracted you're going to be in that environment. Now, some people need total silence and very few visual things happening in their line of sight in order to feel focused. So think about maybe a really quiet place in your house, or perhaps getting some noise canceling headphones that can help block out that extra noise. That might be a really good option for you. Otherwise, maybe something kind of quiet like a fan or a white noise machine or something like that might be a way to kind of block out extra distractions while not being in total silence. Now, if you're somebody who likes to have either some things happening around you or some noise so that you don't get too distracted or feel kind of uncomfortable, that's totally fine to think about using some music or white noise or nature sounds or something like that can help you feel like you are better able to focus. The thing that you need to watch out for, though, is trying to use too many visual things to achieve that like background noise and sense of having things happening around you. I'm talking about things like a TV that's playing maybe in the background or across the room from you, or trying to have a split screen with like Netflix in one side and like a Google Doc on the other. I totally get why that would be a tempting thing to do. It's more entertaining. It's more comfortable. We might feel like we can sit and sustain ourselves longer in a work time by having those competing visual distractions. The problem with it, though, is that your brain every few seconds is going to have to decide what it's supposed to be paying attention to. And what you might find is that even though you sit with your work longer, you don't get quite as much done, and you may feel more fatigued at the end of it just because you've been working mentally so hard to try to pay attention to the right thing. I would much prefer you to choose smaller work times where you block out those other visual distractions rather than a really long work time where your mind is having to compete for what it's supposed to be paying attention to. So it's just a tip. If you don't believe me, give it a try, but I do think that that's a really important kind of self-discipline habit to establish for yourself as you think about your space. So find a space that works well for you. Try some different spaces if you find that one isn't working well for you. Gather the materials that you need, and then make some good decisions for yourself about how much distraction there is in your work environment. I hope these tips help you. Let me know if you have any questions.